Now we'll remove the two O2 sensors from the front of the turn signal module, here and here. The clip is in the back, and they simply, after they're unclipped, pull down. Next, pushing down on these two parts of the clip right here, we'll remove the turn signal module from the battery box. Sure we go. Okay. There's the turn signal module. The ABS module from the battery box. The 4 banjo bolts on the top take a 12 millimeter socket, and then the 3 side bolts and 1 front bolt are 5 millimeter Allen. You want to put a rag down here so you don't get battery juice all over the place. You'll set these rubber grommets aside from the stock battery box for reuse with the new BaggerWerx battery box. Okay, now remove the plug by pulling back on the red keeper, and then pull the plug out of the ABS module. Kill it. Okay, loosen up the 6 bolts that hold the rear subframe assembly onto the stock frame. 2 on top and 1 on the bottom on each side. And remove the 4 fender bolts through the strut, T40 Torx, 2 on each side. Careful not to let the fender fall and scratch, because we will be using it again. We'll lower the fender down to the tire and then rotate it off. Next, jack the bike up so that you can relieve the pressure on the shocks, and then remove the top shock bolts from each side. Rotate the shocks up like this. Next, we'll remove the 3 bolts on each side holding the rear subframe assembly onto the main frame, like this. And remove the subframe assembly. Next, lift the stock battery box out. And release the plug from the side of the battery box. Take the ECM plug and fit it behind the wiring harness, like so, and bring it out underneath, like so. Take the turn signal module plug and run it behind the wiring harness and bring it out the top left of the stock frame. Okay. An 11 millimeter wrench removed the negative battery cable from the top of the transmission. Temporarily put the nut back on the stud for safekeeping. 10 millimeter wrench. Remove the wires from the lugs on either side of the top frame cross member and replace the nut for safekeeping. This next step is for California models only that have the charcoal canister mounted above the upper cross member on the stock frame. Using a T25 Torx, remove the two bolts that are holding the charcoal canister in place. Lift the wires in the wiring harness out of the way and slide the charcoal canister down and out. Okay. Once you've got the canister out, cross member, remove the nipples, the rubber nipples from each port on the canister, being careful not to break the nipples on the canister. Okay, set the canister aside, you'll reuse it. And remove the bottom rubber hose from the purge solenoid. Okay. And remove the rubber hose from the tank tube, like so. After cleaning the battery box and the charcoal canister with the supplied alcohol swab, put the 4 strips of double stick tape that are supplied with the kit onto the charcoal canister, and then keeping this side here and this end here flush with the battery box, stick the charcoal canister to the battery box. Make sure that the nipples are on the same side as the ECM mounting bolts over here. Take the single end, this end with the single wire, and mount it to the top of the transmission with the 11mm nut stock. Okay. Route the new BaggerWerx negative battery cable behind the cross member and over to the left side of the bike. And one end of the battery cable to the transmission mounting stud. Route the battery cable in front of the lower cross member, frame cross, over the cross member and into the wiring harness area here. Now take a zip tie and zip the negative cable to the lower cross member, like so. The positive cable where it attaches to the starter motor. And using a 12mm wrench, remove the positive battery cable from the starter. The other end of the positive battery cable has a lead running out to the 40-amp maxi fuse. Remove the wire guard, and clip on either side. Set it aside, and then using a long, thin screwdriver, push into the 40-amp maxi fuse holder and release the lead, pulling it out the back. Kill it. Take the rubber boot off the old positive battery cable and put it onto the new battery cable. Run the new positive battery cable through the 1-inch hole on the lower frame cross member and attach it to the stud on top of the starter motor. Now we're going to reconnect the 2 wires that were on the grounding lug on the frame cross member and the grounding lug from the negative battery cable. And you want to have it facing off in that direction. Okay, we connect this wire to the grounding lug on this side. I'm going to move the 40-amp maxi fuse holder to the front of the fuse box and plug in the lead coming from the positive battery cable. Right, like so, and then put the wire holder back on the 2 wires. Okay, now we're going to put the BaggerWerx subframe assembly on loosely. Let's put it in place, making sure that you don't pinch any wires, tubes, hoses, or harnesses. Making sure that the BaggerWerx battery box tabs are on top of the frame mounting tabs for the battery box. Once again, this is for the California model bikes with the charcoal canister. You want to take the 5 foot of hose that you've got in the kit, cut it in half, and attach one hose to each of the 2 nipples on the charcoal canister. Pay attention to the fact that the forward nipple hose runs to the tank line and the rear and upper hose runs to the purge solenoid. So you're going to run them behind the wiring harnesses, okay, in front of the cross member, up and under plastic wiring harness guard, and exit on this side of the guard. Okay. 2 hoses, you run the hose that comes from the tank nipple on the charcoal canister to the plastic tube going up to the tank, and the other one to the bottom nipple on the purge solenoid, like so. Okay. Unclip your 2 spark plug wires from the holders that are mounted into the frame. Okay, after unfastening the 2 spark plug wires, you want to feed them through the 1-inch hole in the top of the upper cross member. Okay. And remember that the rear plug goes to the right hand nipple on the coil.